We're just doing that, and hey, it works. Hello, everybody. Lots of wonderful faces. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a real privilege. I flew in from London last night, so it's my first time in Warsaw. I'm really excited. You'll have to excuse me. What we're going to do in the next 45 minutes is take a bit of a kind of satellite view of design, philosophy, artificial intelligence, some of the stuff that we do as a business. I have 2 case studies for you towards the back end of my talk. I'm going to cover some social issues that some people may find uncomfortable, but they're done in a spirit of kind of fun and also the kind of future, the way that we're going with technology and some of these issues. So if you do find them uncomfortable, I apologise, but I'm just giving that warning in advance. We, as a business, we founded it about 5 years ago. We have a business model that is all about kind of educating people around AI, implementing AI, designing AI solutions that are predominantly there to solve social issues, which we'll discuss later. And actually at the heart of our business, and this is the only bit I'm going to talk about my business, and then we're going to get onto the good stuff. The business has a conscious capitalism model. So what we do is we steal kind of technology from industry and then we reapply it to social issues. So what we're really trying to do is bring the big strategic thinking of enterprise and then apply it to things like charity and social enterprise. And that's kind of the methodology behind the business, and it's working really well for us. I have a very straightforward philosophy. I would like technology to get out the way. It seems to me that in the last 20 years we've probably designed far too many screens. It's created some very strange behaviours. I have 2 small children who are exhibiting some very strange behaviours in a good way, in a fun way, but we really want technology to disappear. We want it to kind of evaporate a little bit. Give us all the smart bits of technology, but without so many screens. And we also have a kind of a hypothesis that in the last 20 years as an industry, we've spent an awfully long time plotting user journeys and plotting out customer journeys and so on and so forth, when in reality, every human being is on a journey that we know nothing about. There's been a slight false reality, I think, that we can kind of preempt what people are going to do. Maybe we can now, but for the last 20 years, maybe we haven't. You know, the pen portrait is something that's always upset me. I think we call them pen portraits in the UK. You probably call them personas out here. I don't think anybody's a persona. I am not a persona. I am Charlie's daddy. I'm the guy with the robot arm on the right-hand side. I'm not a persona. I'm not a pen portrait. I'm a me. I'm an us. And that's really the kind of grounding of the business. About 18 months ago, I published a book called Hippo. Hippo is a reference to the hippocampus. It's a part of the brain that helps us navigate. It's a part of the brain that helps us be happy. And it's really a philosophical look about the tensions between humanity and technology. It was a really exciting adventure writing a book. It was something that I would encourage everybody to go and try. It marked 20 years of my career in digital, whatever that means, and data and AI, and is a fun look at what we've done over the last 20 years. So, one of the questions I pose in the book is, what is artificial intelligence? It's a big term. It's something that is still really being defined right now. What is AI? I have a terrible feeling that most people think of AI as this or that one there. You're talking about VR outside. Here's my other favourite one. There you go. The robot stacking boxes. In reality, you know, there's no such thing as an AI. AI is just servers and code and collaborations of algorithms. There's no such thing as an AI. And our clients keep coming to us and saying, can you build us an AI? And we keep having to say, there is no such thing as an AI. It's just collaborations and code. The big question is to ask is what you want that technology to do. And so it always comes back to that kind of human philosophy of what do you want people to do, not what is the thing that you're building. And that's really what we're here to discuss today. We classify kind of in as an industry 3 types of AI: narrow, general, and super. Forget the bottom 2. We are very much in a space as an industry right now of kind of narrow AI. I think there's a lot of noise in the media about, you know, super intelligence and super AI. There are kind of 3 or 4 companies on the planet that may be dipping their toe into general. DeepMind as an example. But really as an industry, we're still in this very narrow frame. We're still trying to do very kind of small things brilliantly with AI and everything that sits in between those 2 letters. And I think that's really, really important to remember. And even the case studies that I've got for you today of some stuff that we're doing is still very narrow on the grand scale of things. So Ignore the media is my first recommendation of the day. How do we get here? We're going to do a very quick history lesson in case anybody doesn't understand. In the 40s, a guy called Warren McCulloch came up with a definition of something called the neural network, which I'm sure the technologists in the room will appreciate, but it was the 40s. And it was the kind of the notion of a machine that can remold itself, can think more like a human being. And it was a hypothesis that we're only really kind of bearing out in reality right now. A fascinating document, actually. It still is available online. You should go and read it. Very forward thinking in a lot of ways, and kind of some of it's starting to come to fruition. Then in the 50s, John McCarthy and a team at MIT defined 7 criteria for AI. And I can't tell you off the top of my head what those 7 things are, but if you go and have a look at them, we're really only 3 out of those 7 things in reality. So even the definition of AI is still not a reality right now. It's still happening. And again, it's a really fascinating piece of research that they came up with. In the kind of 60s, algorithms started to emerge. Nearest Neighbor was an algorithm that was created to help salespeople find their way around cities quicker. And it's still being used. Parts of the Nearest Neighbor algorithm are still used today in sat navigation systems and Google Maps and things like that. So again, even in the 50s, these algorithms were being written, and they're only really coming into fruition right now. They're only really being used kind of commercially right now in a big, big way. Then, in the 60s, Eliza was a very, 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 very basic chatbot system that was designed and created to see if people could understand the difference between a human and a machine in a conversation. Now, there's a lot of talk at the moment about chatbots. These things were around in the 60s. These aren't new things. These are things that were kind of developed and hypothesized and created in the 60s. They're really only now becoming something that we're starting to use quite a lot because they're efficient and the technology is there to support it. Then we go to the arrival of backpropagation. Backpropagation was really the kind of birth of machine learning. Backpropagation helps machines to plug in the gaps between a kind of an answer or a hypothesis and an answer. And that's really, we still do a lot of backpropagation as a business. And our machine learning engineers use tiny bits of what was originally, the concept of backprop. But again, the reason I'm telling you this is because these aren't new concepts. We think they're new concepts as a media industry, but in reality, these things are, sort of 40, 50 years old. There's a big gap in the middle there. It's called the kind of winter, the AI winter. Governments started spending their money on Cold Wars and things like that instead of science. So we didn't spend too much money in the middle there. But then we get to things like the self-driving car. Now, the reason the self-driving car was designed, put out on the roads in the 80s, but never really sort of went much further than those concepts is because it kept killing people, which is a bit of a problem. And we still have the same problem now, which is the cars keep running over chickens and things. These are not new problems. So Mercedes had this one cracked in the 80s, and now you've got your Googles and everybody jumping on board and saying, look, we've developed the self-driving car. Like Mercedes did it. You can get a car to navigate the block, but you can't get it to not run over a cat. That's the big problem. So we're a bit away from that. Then we get to the really interesting stuff. This is the 90s. We get to the next part of my story, my part of the story. In the 90s, machines started to kind of beat masters at the thing that they were supposedly the best at. So Kasparov was beaten by one of the IBM machines at chess. And it was about this time that I left school. There I am up there. Look. And that's me. And so that's me and my mates on our last day at school. And I entered the industry. When I left school, I wanted to be Postman Pat. Now, I don't know if... Do you have Postman Pat in Poland? Yeah, right, good. He's universal. I like that. I always thought Postman Pat had the best job in the world. He was a very happy man. He just went around delivering mail. That didn't happen. What happened instead is, at about the same time that Kasparov was being beaten by machines, I entered this kind of digital industry, and it's been a massive adventure. It's been a real adventure. And I was in data-driven design back in the 90s. I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen over the last 20 years. It's been really fascinating. This is kind of what happened. So about the same time that the machines were beating Kasparov at chess, we were chopping up brochures, which is very progressive of us. And then in about 2003-ish, 2002, our clients were asking us to make those brochures wobble, and we kind of animated those brochures. Then we get to kind of social media. That's where things really started to go crazy. The world got a tiny bit smaller, perhaps a little bit more chaotic. Really exciting stuff. Mobile generation, so the smartphone revolution sort of happened, within my career, within most of our careers, I should imagine. Really fascinating stuff. And then the quantified self. So then we start to kind of collect a vast amount of content and data and behavioral insights on people. I could not have predicted in the last 20 years of my career, at the end of the kind of the noughties, at the end of the 90s, that any of this would exist. It would have been foolish for me to have predicted that any of this stuff would exist right now, which is really fascinating when you think that these are new inventions. So AI and everything we spoke about took kind of 50 years to get to where we are. This stuff's been happening in a condensed time. Fascinating stuff, really fascinating stuff. They didn't exist. I had no idea this was going to happen. This is the Pope's inauguration in 2005 and 2013. I think there's an early adopter up there somewhere. There's like one screen, but this is exactly the same place in St. Peter's Square. It's just insanity, absolute insanity. And I also had no idea that within my career this would kind of happen as well. So the time it took to reach 50 million people, radio compared to Angry Birds, like this is lunacy in a very good way, It's been an exciting kind of couple of years, to say the least. Statistically, our lives pivot around our phones. I think it's about 177 minutes a day, 177 minutes connected to our device every day, 150 times a day, excuse me. And I wonder how many of you would function if I took your phone away from you for a day. Oh, sound please. Okay, let's try this one again. There's always a technical error. Talk amongst yourselves. Anyway, how's nice weather today? What an amazing building. I walked up the road to the building. I was like, I'm used to conference centres. This looks like something out of a Gothic horror story. It's beautiful. Incredible. What are you guys going to do to me today? Oh, here we go.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there? Somebody? Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
Now, I'm being flippant. I know we all know how to walk upstairs. I wonder what would happen if I took your phone away from you. Let's just do a quick experiment. Get your phones out. I want everyone to get their phone out. If there's anyone in the room without a phone at MCE, unlock it. Yeah, everyone's phone's unlocked? Yeah? Yes. Hand it to the person next to you. Does everybody have somebody else's phone? Yeah? Put your hand up if you don't have someone else's phone. You're the lucky one. Come on. See, well, anyway, you're making my experiment work anyway. You've got 30 seconds to look through the phone in your hand. Ooh, that's uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah? Yeah, you don't like that? So don't anybody in the room tell me that technology has not made us a bit weird. It's really weird, isn't it? It's like when we used to talk about the personal computer. You can give them back. Give them back. Give them back. I don't want divorces. That's not my game. But we used to talk about the personal computer at the start of my career. Like these things right here are the personal computer. There are really 4 parts to our digital soul. There's the shiny bit on the front, the app, the service, the notification. Right down in the guts of those phones in your hand is our data. Now, data is the bit that's always excited me. Data is the bit that I've always laboured on. Data is the bit that drives our business. And within those shiny experiences are your digital soul. It's the data that you generate every single day for everything that you do. And that's your psychometric, that's your biometric. There's so much data that's being collected on that device. And that's really the kind of the bit that gets us almost to the kind of the AI part of our story, because the reason that little digital soul is so important, because that's the fuel that we've been missing to make AI work. Incidentally, there's a setting if you have an iPhone that's automatically send your data, like switch that off. You've been sending your data to all sorts of people, and that stuff's very, very personal. As I've just demonstrated by your reaction, when people had to hand their phones over. Telematics is really fascinating. The last couple of years, we've been using telematic data collected on phones to do some really interesting stuff. Here's an experience that we helped create called Firefly. Firefly was really a tracking system that we used underneath web chat and other types of AI-powered systems that we've been developing, and it was really to help give context to some of the experiences and some of the conversations that are happening. So telematics is really fascinating, and I'm sure most of you, especially the developers in the room, know and understand telematics, but it's a source of data that's very rarely tapped into for digital experiences, in my opinion anyway, and it's probably the richest one because it gives us context. The next one that's really fascinating is emotional analytics, and that might sound a little bit, it's a silly term, it is a silly term, but cognitive biometrics is another kind of emerging space that's definitely worth looking at. Israel appears to be a bit of a hotbed for emotional analytics. I'm not quite sure why it's down in Israel at the moment, but there's some really interesting stuff going on there. Beyond Verbal is a company who've been doing some really, really fascinating stuff, analysing voice biometrics and the way that you hold your phone as well. So there's a data collected in the way that you hold your phone, not just what you do on your phone. So it uses that accelerometer. Really amazing, amazing stuff, especially when you start coupling it all together. We're generating, 2.5 quadrillion bytes of this data every single day. It's just insanity, absolute insanity. That's kind of only really happened in the last couple of years, since every weirdo with a phone started doing everything on their phones. And there's a lot of numbers on here. Like, you don't have to read them all, but this is what happened last year in 1 second of the internet, according to these people. I'm not quite sure how you measure this stuff, but we'll take it with a pinch of salt and agree that it's the truth. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating stuff. And that really brings us to the next part of the AI journey. So as I've just demonstrated, it's the data that we've been powering the AIs with that's starting to make it really, really, really clever now, and is redefining technology as we probably knew it up until this point. So in sort of about 2010, AI, Watson beat Jeopardy. Like, okay, it's not the greatest case study in the world. If I had Wikipedia on a computer next to me, I could probably beat most people at a trivia game. But it was a really good indicator that machines were going to start beating us at our own games. This gets us to a really, really fascinating thing. Oops. Oh yeah, so about this time, Nest thermostats started appearing as well. Anybody got a Nest? A couple of people. Nest is great. It's collecting our data at home, probably sharing that with Google as well. Netflix. Anyone got Netflix? Yeah, most people. Netflix is amazing. I challenge anyone in the room to try and speak to a human being at Netflix. You've never needed to, because the UX is so good, but also they're a very, 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 very small, lean team. Content creation is where they've spent all their money. The actual business is run predominantly from robotic process automation and machine learning and data and so on and so forth. Amazing company. Deliveroo, do you have Deliveroo? It's on its way. Deliveroo is a fast food service. It's a bit like Uber, but for food. And their algorithm, Frank, basically calculates the time it takes from sort of pizza oven to table, and then uses nearest neighbour to help those delivery people find the quickest route. Amazing stuff. Here's my favourite one. Cloudflare, which allegedly power the security for about 10% of the internet. They power their security, their cryptography, with machine vision cameras. Again, the chaos generated by those lava lamps and those 1 or 2 cameras apparently is one of the best cryptographic security systems on the internet, which again is really fascinating. And that gets us to this really interesting bit. That gets us to kind of now. And at the end of 2016, AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol at the game of Go. Go is one of the most complicated games on the planet. There are something like 2,500 potential moves per turn. No one said that they could beat Lee Sedol at his own game, except in the infamous move 37, Lee Sedol actually got up and walked out the room. He said the machine had cheated. He said it had played a move, he did not like it at all, he got up and he walked out. Game 3, move 37. What the machine had actually done, what AlphaGo had actually done, was create an entirely new move that had never been played before. Like astonishing stuff. Bit creepy, but it had thought strategically, and again, pinch of salt, like I don't believe that machines can think, I believe machines can process, but it was a real kind of tipping point, a watershed moment. And that gets us to kind of where we are right now. That gets us to the next part of our story. One thing is for sure, as long as I've been in industry, you know, the more I thought I knew, actually, like, I don't know anything. Because as a practitioner, to think that I'm ahead of the curve, to think that I know what's happening next is a kind of falsehood. It's not happening. I cannot predict what's happening next. And actually, I've had a lot more fun in my career since I've stopped trying to predict what's coming. We're at a massive moment of kind of cultural acceleration, not just of cultural change, as I think maybe we just demonstrated with some of the kind of statistics, and that's a given. And that's why as a business, we've set ourselves some kind of ethical ground rules, and I'm going to talk you through 2 case studies that fit within these ground rules. We only design AI systems because of what its potential is, even in a narrow sense. We only design things that fit to the kind of basic human conditions. We ask ourselves every single time, is this technology that we're about to push out enriching or eroding humanity? Are we replacing a job or augmenting a job? We will not do job replacement work. The issues around it are just far too complex. We won't do self-driving cars. They keep killing chickens. And so on and so forth. But these are kind of the pillars for our business. So I have 2 case studies. Take them in the spirit of innovation. They're both quite tough, but tough is good because tough is human. And I want you to come away from these 2 case studies and think like, okay, this is redefining technology, or is technology redefining us? The first case study I have is about a friend of mine, James. I've been working with James for the last couple of years. This is James.
So my name's James Dunn and I'm 23. I suffer from a rare genetic skin condition called recessive dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. Basically, I'm missing the glue in between each layer of skin, therefore my skin will just peel off, blister and scar with friction, leaving wounds all over my body.
James is a remarkable man, like a remarkable man. He's 24 years old. He's lived his entire life with this condition. He was born with it. And when I met James a couple of years ago, he was like, dude, you're the one that does all the crazy AI stuff. What's my legacy in all of this? What is it that I can do that brings this technology into my world, that makes my life easier, that makes my world more approachable? There are some pretty horrific symptoms of his condition. He's got no hands, which was one symptom of his condition. That was pretty easy for us to fix, and I don't mean that in a flippant way. We put voice interfaces all over his house, which again, if you think back 4 or 5 years ago, until Jeff Bezos rolled out the Echo, that was expensive. He's got £30, $30 voice interfaces all over his house, and he can do things that he could never do before. Incredible. And we use that. He wanted to move beyond his broken body. He wanted something that would take everything that was in his mind, which is incredible, and move beyond the body that he was born with. So we started doing some really interesting things with him. I just want to play this very short clip of James again, and I think at the end of it you'll agree that these are memories worth saving.
Years ago I'd talk about the condition, how bad it was, how painful it was, how depressing it was, and how much it affects my life negatively. Now I'm putting a whole different slant on that. I've learned to focus on the positive points of the condition, the happiness I have in life. EV isn't me. It doesn't define who I am. It's a small part of me, and that it's 10% of me. The other 90% is a whole lot. It's a whole different aspect. There's a lot more things to me apart from EV, and that's what I like to talk about. I like to talk about how, during my hardest times, through pain, through depression, the one thing that's kept me going is positivity and smiling and laughter. A great family helps always, but if you surround yourself by loving, happy people, and you remember, even if you're having a total rubbish day, that you always smile.
Like, what a guy. Seriously, and this is something, the reason I love doing this story and talking about this is because this is our job. We get to spend time with human beings like this, not technology, with human beings like this. It's an absolute privilege. He's an incredible man. So we began documenting James's memories. We started putting James's memories into a large corpus, unstructured database of his thoughts, video clips, audio files, and so on and so forth, so that, when he's no longer with us, people could access some of the things that make James brilliant, and that he could talk to other people all over the world that suffer from similar conditions and try and find some coping mechanisms for their conditions. We hacked those basic voice interfaces that we put around his house, and he now has the ability to kind of record what's going on in his head and document that into a corpus of knowledge for us. Amazing. Then our adventure got a little bit more exciting. We discovered the most incredible piece of technology. This is Bo. Bo has been designed and built by a Ukrainian company called Bots and Us. Bo was designed for shopping malls and banking halls and things like that. It's a fully autonomous machine. It's absolutely stunning. It's about that big. James and I were talking at a conference. He saw Bo and he was just like, what is that? I want that. Which is kind of the way that James operates in the world. Bo is a really stunning piece of tech. The reason that we really love Bo as a piece of technology is because it's not kind of weird mannequin like plastic robot from the screens I showed you earlier. It's a truly astonishing kind of drone. It's a really, really amazing thing. The brain inside Bo can be tuned to do pretty much anything that we need it to do. It's got voice, touchscreen, hi-fi audio, so on and so forth. It's a really, really wonderful piece of kit. We're going to start seeing many, many more of these kind of machines kind of in society in the next couple of years, and I mean that truly. Having spent a year playing with this particular piece of technology, it's very, very close to just being in society. It's not science fiction anymore. Bo's got some really neat bits of technology built in. It's got facial recognition. It can tell how someone's feeling. The team that have been building it have really spent a long time trying to work on its emotional responses to people. It's not human by design. It's like a droid, which gives it some potency. And what we also discovered is that in life, it's a big data hoover. So it could suck up quite a lot of information about James from his environment as well. So while he's recording all his memories, this machine can then kind of start to suck in some of the things that happen around that. So kind of the temperature and James's mood and things that were happening in his environment that might make his life more complicated. Staggering. And again, this is really important because a couple of years ago, this stuff just did not exist. And so to talk about how tech is redefining us, or we're redefining tech, these are new progressions. Our biggest challenge is going to be giving Bo a voice. James's memories, he doesn't want to be a kind of chatbot. He didn't want to be a kind of voice in a box.
I have lots of hobbies. One of the main things is photography. I love getting out and taking pictures, and it seems to sort of take my mind off the pain, and it allows me to express myself creatively and use it as a way of being happy and positive and pain-free.
So the AI that we've been developing with James that will go inside Bo at some point has generative voice qualities as well. So the Google demo the other week, the duplex stuff, it's all based on the same technology. We're basing it on the same technology. I'm not saying they based it on our technology. It's the same kind of technology. But the fact that we have James's voice means that we can also generate James's voice, which is pretty astonishing. We've also worked out how to get the machine to react to other voices.
Hello, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
So my name's James Dunn, and I'm 23. I suffer from a rare genetic skin condition called...
So we've managed to get the voice inside Bo generating James's voice in reaction as well, which is really, truly incredible. He's already had some fun going out and scaring people, which is great. It's all part of James's is fun. And James's story, really only sort of began the minute we could start to manipulate some of that data, the technology that's available now. He just wants to be everywhere at any time so that anybody who wants to learn from him can do so. I'm going to play this quickly and then go on to my next case study.
Always smile. You're not only going to help yourself and make yourself feel better, but you're going to help the person you smile to. So even if you're walking down the street in London one day and you see someone that looks a bit down, give them a smile. They might not say, oh, that really cheered me up, but in your heart that that's going to have an impact on that person, and they're most likely going to remember that for the rest of their day, and it could help them. They might have had a really bad time in work. Smile at them, make the day better, and smile for yourself too. No matter how hard life is, you can't focus on it because you're just gonna keep going down and down and down. You need to go up and up and up and smile and be positive.
Yeah, so James left us on the 7th of April, unfortunately, but we got enough. So we got quite a lot of James. His family have been involved in this project, obviously, ethically. But yeah, we got enough to create a legacy for a young man with an amazing mind. If that's not technology doing very good, better things, I'm really proud. It makes a huge difference to me to be able to do really fascinating work that gives people a legacy. Robots are not here just to take our jobs. I think robots can be so much more than that. I think AI can be so much more than that, and I think we need to remember that. The next case study I'm going to do really quickly, because I know I'm going to run out of time, is all about all talk and no buttons. Again, redefining technology is about getting rid of some of those screens. I've already mentioned that. It's a piece of work that we've been doing. It's a case study about talking. It's a case study about human beings. These people, I've swapped their faces out for stock photography, but they are real people. It's based on real people. They spend 80% of their time in 5 apps. One of those is a chat app of some kind. That's the behavior that we all display now. I imagine most of you have got 2 or 3 chat-based applications on your phones at the moment. They all generate vast quantities of that data that we've already talked about. We can learn a vast amount about these people from the data in the belly of their phones that I've already described to you. Really fascinating. They also suffered from an illness. Sorry, 2 case studies about illness, but we are vulnerable people. It's the second biggest cause of disability in the world at the moment. 12.7% of absences are down to this particular illness. There's some of the 1 in 6 people that suffer from a mental health condition of some kind or variety. This is technology. It's the sweet spot for this kind of technology now. It's the hidden illnesses that I think we can really start to use some of this technology to do some great stuff about. 2 of these people never made it. 2 of these people are also not with us anymore. And 3 of my friends from that photo at the start are no longer with us because of this particular illness. Gloom, I get it. However, anybody that knows me knows that when I get an idea in my head, I'm a sucker for a challenge. So we've gone out and used a whole bunch of AI for really, really, really important positive reasons. We're trying to kind of get involved in this particular issue in the UK, see if we can build some tech that will help to identify and solve these problems. It's a story of positivity, not negativity. If we can't use the kind of technology that's available now to try and solve these problems, what should we be using it for? Making phone lines better or making production lines quicker? We started the project by asking people what is support? What does support mean to them? And support to a lot of these people means just something there. The phones that you all pulled out of your pockets are there. You probably spend more time talking to your phones, chatting to people on the other side of the internet on your phones than you do to other human beings. That's support to you. That's what support means to you. I spent quite a long time, watching movies like Her. I don't know if you've seen the movie Her. It's a really interesting film. It's about a man who's not particularly happy, talks to his phone, Samantha, the operating system. If you haven't seen the movie Her, go and watch it. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And on the back of that kind of work, we took the human-focused approach to AI that we do as a business, and we've created a piece of technology called Sue. This is Sue. built Sue as a life support system. It's chat based at the moment, but it conceivably could be voiced quite quickly. It's a system that's there really to try and work out if change is occurring, will change be coped with, what happens if change is approached and you're not equipped to deal with it. It uses all the data that sits underneath your chat interfaces, that stuff I was talking about earlier, telematics, cognitive biometrics and so on and so forth. But really it's a psychology experiment. What we've been doing is studying conversation. What makes a conversation? And it's really complicated to replicate. Machines are not good at this at the moment. And we've been spending quite a lot of time working out the psychology behind conversations to seeing if we can replicate some of that to create a life support system that people will actually talk to. Statistically, we're up to about 4.5 minutes of chat through an artificial machine, an AI, which is pretty remarkable. And we've done a lot of work on what we call minimum viable personality. So at the moment, the kind of industry is minimum viable product, get that? When the screens start to disappear, you're going to end up doing design work that's much more minimum viable personality. Who is the thing in the machine? What are the traits that make this machine work? For me, it's a new emerging area that most companies should start to invest and think about. We do a huge amount of this stuff. It's really interesting as well. Sue is gender neutral. Like, I'm not into this whole like female AI thing. That's just weird. But you know, it's happening. And what we did was we taught the machine to ask a lot of questions. So you go right back to my slide earlier about Eliza, the chatbot. We're using quite a lot of the techniques that they came up with in the 60s to drive the logic behind these kind of systems. It's there to ask more questions and give answers. And in that sense, kind of hold a conversation and help people understand their own situations and so on and so forth. It's a psychology experiment, not a technology experiment. I don't think technology should ever be the reason. Technology should always be the kind of output, not the input. And what we really wanted to do is work out whether a machine like this could get people to talk. We told 250 people in the early experiment, and we've not been experimenting on people who are mentally unwell, so don't worry. We told half of them that they were talking to a kind of puppet, a machine that was controlled by a person, and then the other half we told that they were just talking to the machine. Psychologically, the people that thought they were only talking to the machine engaged in less impression management. They got straight to their problems, they held conversations for longer, they were more willing to share what was going on with them. So again, technology is probably redefining us in as much as that we feel sometimes more comfortable talking to it about our problems than we do another human being. So it's a big opportunity, a really big opportunity. Oh, it's a data slide. Sorry. Numbers. We've been collecting quite a lot of data. I was meant to take that one out. There you go. Go on, get off the data. No one cares about the data. And now we have a bit of an ethical schism, right? So now we reach the ethics part of this particular case study, and it's quite a tricky one to get over. So one of the guys in the slide earlier, we were given his phone by his family. We looked at the data on his phone. This is from the data that I showed you on your phones. When you get right down into the guts of it, we found this stuff really like dark. Like, this is tricky stuff. Some of you have probably got switched on and they've been sending their data off to whichever technology provider gives them their phones. They've been collecting all sorts of stuff about you. They collected this kind of stuff from Ben. We also did some analysis on the notes, the suicide notes of people who kind of went through with taking their lives and those people that threatened it but didn't go through with it. What was really fascinating is that the AI was able to define one difference in the groups of people that did and the groups of people that threatened but didn't. Sense of burden. So sense of burden was the only thing that it found that was different. So predictably, I mean, we could use the phone data that you have, the phone data that you generate, to predict if somebody is going to do something detrimental to themselves, or predict a health outcome, or predict, if somebody is displaying something that could be kind of detrimental to their health, and so on and so forth. pretty difficult stuff to get over. I am married to a human rights lawyer, so it becomes quite difficult to have these conversations at home. We're not doing predictive stuff with any of our AI. It becomes surveillance. I would have to look at every single person in this room's phone to find the one person that my AI could have a conversation with. I would have to look at you all. So predictive analytics in this sense is pretty complicated and dark stuff. However, there are companies all over the world that are using that data against your, without your permission every day. So it becomes quite a kind of strange ethical debate. And so a lot of what you need to kind of go away from this conference with today and tomorrow is kind of, we can do so much good for society. Where's the ethics on this kind of line? Where are the opportunities to give James a legacy versus, technology that spies on us that could save us from harm? It's kind of really difficult. Technology, data, all the stuff that we do is awesome, and we are at an amazing time. However, it cannot just give you a cuddle. So as brilliant as all this stuff is, just ask somebody if they're all right. Give them a cuddle, tell them they're loved. That will probably save a life, not AI. Just to kind of slightly wrap up, a couple of years ago, somebody said to me, why would you start to direct your business? Why would you write this book? Why would you start to direct your business in doing some of these quite tough, ethically complicated types of technology? This is why. This is footage from a festival in Canada, in Sasquatch. So I guess the moral of my talk is, we can do stuff that we dreamt about 50 years ago. We can do it right now. It does not take sensible, educated people to make those changes. We can keep kind of refining the version of something that exists, or we can start designing new versions of something better. And that's really why, as a business, we've started to look at actual human issues and say, let's solve those. Let's create legacies. Let's help people who are vulnerable, and so on and so forth, because it just makes a lot more sense. AI gives us the opportunity to change the relationships between people and machine. It helps us reimagine business models and processes, but more importantly, what we're doing right now is unlocking the value in that strange behavior that we all have, that kind of addiction to our phones and so on and so forth. So enjoy the next couple of days. Think about all of the stuff that you're going to hear in a kind of like, well, how can I solve an actual problem with that? Or what can I do that makes my business better from a kind of less capitalist point of view and a more human point of view with that technology? It is a wonderful time to be alive. I feel really privileged to meet people like you who are going to redefine the next version of our industry. Thanks very much. I am a fool.